YouTube? It's your boy Aydian here, and I just did my shot. Woohoo! I've actually been doing my shot in the morning lately. I think it just gives me less time to think about it, which means just less time to stress out about it and just get it done. So Jenilee and I are up this morning. We are going to head to Starbucks to get some coffee, and we're actually doing two things. We will be recording the Q&A where we asked for you guys to drop some questions below our picture on Instagram. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, and if you ever want to be included in giveaways or in Q&As and stuff like that, definitely go follow me. It's just at AllianceFear, so no S, just drop the S. So we're gonna record the Q&A, and we're also doing, actually two things are going on. It's kind of a busy day today, actually. So this might turn into two videos, because I also will be, we're also going to a community credit union downtown, because we're gonna transfer our banks from Bank of America to a community credit union, and that's because of the, this is gonna be our action for February. So we're gonna be removing our money from Bank of America because they are supporters and help fund the pipeline. So the Bank of America helps fund the pipeline, so we're going to remove our money from Bank of America and 0.5cc monies from Bank of America. Point of Pride money is already in a community credit union, so we're going to move our money to a community credit union also. So this is part one, so we have to go open up a community credit bank. Then we're going to wait a week so we can transfer all of our information over to our new debit cards and stuff, and then we'll officially cancel our Bank of America. So step one of a two-step process. So we're going to go head to Starbucks and get some coffee in these veins. What's going on? So we just got some Starbucks. We're about to go to the bank, but real quick, we're gonna just do two questions, and then we're just gonna kind of throw it in throughout the day before my camera dies. Where did you guys meet? From Dusty Cheeto, and from Looking in the Shadows also, how did you guys meet? I think a couple of people asked this question. So we actually met right here on YouTube. Jenilee used to make videos for people who were dating trans men, and I was making videos for my own transition. Very organically, I was just following her for advice, and she was following me, and you know, we just kind of started commenting on each other's stuff. I was baking then, so I shared some recipes with her, and we just started talking, and then we were texting. I was living in New York, she was living in Florida, and I came down to visit her in January of 2010, and we decided to start dating since then. That's how we met. So right here on YouTube.
From Pastel Queer Pride, what's it been like knowing him and seeing him transition? Has who he is as a person changed since transitioning? It's been a wild ride. It's been amazing seeing him transition. It's been amazing going through the transition with him, and just witnessing him become more and more authentic and more of who he is inside. Watching him transition has been like watching a flower blossom.
Oh, that's pretty.
Yeah, I really do feel that. There's something else in there about, you know, did he lose his femininity and stuff like that, and as much as it might appear that way physically, I don't feel like that's
What was the
true.
question?
Something about did he lose
the whole
his
thing.
femininity?
Where is it?
Yeah, I really feel like he embraces his femininity more than he even did in the past. When first met him, I feel like he thought he had something to prove, especially because I had dated trans men before, so I feel like it was like he wanted to show me that he was masculine, and like I feel like I was never really seeking that necessarily.
All right, new battery. Go ahead.
I don't think that who he is as a person has changed. It's just deepened. a lot, and I feel like I've gotten to know parts of him that were hiding underneath everything that was blocking him from feeling confident in himself. And it's been amazing knowing him. It's been really awesome to see him transition and like blossom into this like flower. It feels like, you know, he was closed and it like slowly opened and now is incredibly open. And
If you want, I can flip it down so you can't see yourself. Then you're
maybe
forced
that
to
would be
look
better,
at the camera.
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I keep looking up
It's
there,
hard.
yeah.
So there's this camera here, which is you guys, but then there's this other, the flip up side of the camera. So it's hard because you try to look at yourself to make sure you're in frame, but then it looks like we're not looking at you guys. It looks like we're looking above you guys. So
Right.
it becomes confusing, but
Yeah.
we're doing our
And it's-
best.
yeah.
Let's just do rapid fire. Like, you know what I mean? Some rapid fire stuff. Neutral Wolf, what was an unexpected change from Aydian being on T? Anything you didn't expect?
Anticipate?
Yeah. Anything you didn't anticipate?
I guess just like really seeing the power of testosterone and how it just, I guess, created this very direct, action-orientated part of Aydian. Like it's like birthed that part of him.
So this is like another kind of same question from Lacey Term Trooper. What was it like when he first started transitioning on T? I think I was hyper. I think I was more hyper than I am now.
Hyper a lot. Yeah, hyper in a lot of ways, I would say.
I was like super hyper. I used to like act like kind of like a 14-year-old sometimes, like just laughing at like jokes that have to do with sex and or like, you know, right? Or like making anything sexual, or like being like, oh, I'm gonna go climb this tree and then jump over this thing and then hurt myself, you know what I mean?
He used to, yeah, that's true. He used to hurt himself a lot more, like in terms of
Not
just,
on
like,
purpose.
accidentally, because he would just do like want to like have these spurts of energy and just like do these things of like climbing trees and like jumping down from things that were like higher than they were seeming, and me just feeling like, okay, I don't want to be like a mom right now, but what the hell are you doing?
Gretchen Rose 81, did you meet while or before you transitioned? I'm just kind of picking ones that are like being answered through these. So we met, we met for the first time. I was not on hormones. Then like in person, because I was living in New York, she was living in Florida. The second time we met in person, I was on hormones, but only for literally less than 8 weeks.
Yeah, and the second time we met in person was, we were already talking. Do people still say talking? Like
I don't
when
know.
You're talking to someone.
You're talking. You're not dating, but you're not official. You're just like talking to them.
Yeah, you're like flirting and, you know, getting to know each other. But in that way, that's not just friendly.
Yeah. Okay, so last question before we go to the bank. It says, ew, who is that kid? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you love your cats?
11.
Yeah, okay. I guess Jenilee loves them more. So we just got to the bank. We're gonna go in here. It's a community credit union for Oregon, and get to see if we can see what we need actually to transfer over our information. I don't know if what we're gonna need to prove that we live here and all that stuff like that. So let's go do it.
Alright, this one's from Brianna Meow. As a partner of a trans man, I have always felt alone in the sense of support for the partner and kind of lost myself for a while being so focused on him and his starting of his transition. Did either of you use certain communication techniques to keep everything balanced in the sense of emotional support? And for Jenilee, did you ever feel invisible in the sense of your identity to the community as well in the relationship?
It's a nice long one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in terms of communication, I think that in terms of communication techniques, the best thing that we have found is using I statements when speaking to each other, and therefore we're not pointing the finger or, you know, trying not to be defensive and just like speaking of our own experience to each other. You know, like when you said this, I felt this, I feel this when you say this, not you made me feel that. individual experiences is the best way to communicate.
Yeah, and like just to piggyback off of that, I feel like the way to respond to an I feel or an I statement would be to recognize that just because your intention was not to make them feel this way doesn't mean that's what happened. Sometimes you could be like, well, I didn't mean to say it that way, and it's like it doesn't matter what you meant. It matters how they feel after you said it. So being able to acknowledge that maybe sometimes when you say something, it's actually not taken the way you intended it, and that it's still your responsibility to take on that, like, just the accountability of that. Like, okay, so you said this thing, and it made me feel like shit, and you didn't mean to say it, but I still felt like shit. So then the other person has to kind of say, okay, like, I acknowledge that your feelings are true and valid, and that my intention was not to make you feel like shit, but I can take the responsibility that how I said it or how it was presented made you feel crappy. So I am going to try not to say it like that anymore, or I'm going to try to become aware of what I'm saying, instead of just saying, well, I didn't mean to make you feel that way and you're just being too sensitive. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah. So like recognizing where you're becoming defensive and how often, and, you know, just trying your hardest to become more aware of your part in the communication, like what you're doing, whether it's your tone, your facial expression, your volume of your voice, when you're approaching them, how you're approaching them, you know, whether or not you're assuming something, is really helpful in terms of communication.
Totally.
And then the other part of the question was, Jenilee, did you ever feel invisible in the sense of your identity to the community as well as in the relationship? I never felt invisible in the relationship. Aydian has always really tried to make it about us and, you know, tend to what I was going through in the relationship and through the transition from day one. But yes, absolutely in the community. I don't feel like there's enough space for partners of trans people. No. SOFAs, you know, significant others and friends. You don't even hear
that really heard anymore.
Yeah, well, when I feel like more in the beginning of his transition, and even before that, when I was, you know, dating in the trans community, SOFAs was the term that I was in, right? Like I was included in that of significant others, friends and family members of trans people, and I feel like that's a lot to put into one acronym. You know?
Well, because a partner, somebody who's romantically in a relationship with someone is going to have a way different experience than like if it's your kid. I mean, we're talking about two completely different experiences, two totally completely different relationships.
Yeah, and I'm not knocking the acronym, and I'm happy that it was created, because at that time, you know,
at least it was
at that time, at least it was there and it was needed. But at the same time, like looking back, it wasn't really what I needed to feel supported. I really needed more acknowledgement that there are all different types of people that are in relationships with transgender people, and you can't just lump them together in one acronym.
And I also feel like there's this other concept that, like, there's no representation of people who identify in their cisgender, you know what I mean, and also date or, you know, are in love with trans people, because I feel like it's a different kind of person too, because it's like, you know, you're not experiencing some gender normative binary cis lifestyle. You're not, because you date a trans man, and everything is different about our relationship than a cis person, you know what I mean? So your experiences are so different than the average girl who's married to a man, you know what I mean? Like, it's so different, and I feel like there's never acknowledgement of that. There's no hashtag for Jenilee. There's no, you know, I put hashtag trans couple, and then everyone thinks we're both trans.
Right, well, I've done that too. I've put hashtag trans couples.
And then people are like, Jenilee's trans? And it's like...
Yeah, and they'll ask me if I'm trans, and it's not like I'm really offended by that, because...
No, it's just more like...
Maybe I could be, but the fact is that I'm not, and I don't see space or already established way of describing my experience. I think the same way transgender is a spectrum and gender is a spectrum is the same way that I feel in my experience that like there's this spectrum. I've met so many different types of partners of trans men and partners of trans women that identify in different ways. And, you know, there was a point, you know, in our relationship when I was meeting a lot of lesbian identified partners of trans men and feeling like I was the odd one out because I don't identify as a lesbian. I did at one point in my life when I was really young and I was really unsure of, you know, who I was, but that didn't last very long and I don't really identify that way at all. So trying to relate to others that have an experience of I don't identify as a lesbian. If Aydian didn't transition, I would still be with him, but I don't know that I would identify as a lesbian. So it's really just a way of looking at yourself and looking at your relationship and seeing what that means for you. But I definitely felt like there wasn't a lot of space, and I still feel like there's not a lot of space for partners of transgender people. So yeah.
Boom. Cool.
Okay, this question's from Izumi Suicide. It says, I'm a cis girl dating an amazingly handsome trans guy for 2 years. I was wondering, what is the best way to help and support him when he's having a particularly bad dysphoria day? I've tried in the past and only made it worse. So I relate to this a lot. I feel like I was in that space for a very long time. When Aydian would have dysphoria days, I would make it worse by just saying, well, you look great, and you know, and that was fine. Like, giving him a compliment is fine, but when he's in that moment of dysphoria, I find that validating his experience is the most powerful and effective way to really support him.
Yeah, because even you just saying that, I just thought to myself, like, yeah, saying I look good is fine, but it totally invalidates the experience I'm having in that moment. And it's like, it feels like you don't even get it. Like, me saying, like, oh, I hate my chest, and you being like, you look great. Like, it totally invalidates my feeling. It makes me feel like you don't even understand what I'm going through, so it's pointless for you to even say anything right now. Right. Yeah.
So then, you know, then it would get to a point where he doesn't really even want to tell me about his dysphoria because I wasn't really being helpful. So, you know, again, the power of allowing each individual person to have their own separate experience, and both are valid and both have enough space to breathe and have a moment, is really the most powerful way to support each other in terms of, you know, like this specific instance of having a dysphoric moment. You know, so just like really just like letting him vent and talk about that and you know, like really like acknowledge the pain and the discomfort that he's in. And then obviously like later on you can have space to compliment him and be like, you know, like, I think you look really great and this is what I appreciate about your body. And my experience is that I like those things about your body, or, you know, like, and then he can give you space to have your experience. But in the moment, you know, whatever partner is feeling the most upset or needs the most attention in that moment is really the time to validate and say, yeah, like, you've been feeling that for a long time, and you know, like, I honor that you're in that much pain, and how can I better support you? What do you feel like you need right now in this moment? Would you rather me give you space? Would you rather me just hug you or hold you? You know, would you, like, what do you feel like you need? And like asking them, because we can't assume that we know what they need. We can't assume that people know what we need. We need to speak our needs.
Totally. All right, it's done. We just set up with our local community credit union. Yay! Unfortunately, we do have to keep the Bank of America for just a little bit because we have like Geico payments that come out of there and some other stuff. Once that is kind of like all set up. The guy at the credit union said sometimes it's like a minimum of like 30 days just to make sure everything transfers over. Probably just start using this one, stop using the Bank of America, and then after we know that we're really not using Bank of America like at all, nothing's getting pulled from there automatically and all that jazz, then we'll go and cancel those and we'll just be credit union. I actually even have to set up something for 0.5cc because right now 0.5cc uses Bank of America, so I'm gonna have to kind of go through this process again, but we were doing it together as a family and I'll do it as a business at another time. If you have, what is it, Chase? Who is it? Chase, Bank of America, and there's a few other banks that are supporting the pipeline. Thank you. I keep freaking forgetting it. My mind's all over the place. They're supporting the pipeline. They're giving the people the loans and the money to go ahead and destroy the treaties that we have with the native indigenous people of that land. So it's really messed up, and we don't want to be a part of it, so that's why we pulled our money out of Bank of America. And we really encourage you, if you're part of Bank of America or any of the other banks, you could just Google, quick little Google search of banks that support the pipeline, and you can go ahead and pull your money and do the same thing. Credit unions are awesome too. They're like super local. They're much better, honestly, in my opinion anyway, so. All right, guys, check back on Monday for part 2 of this Q&A. Thanks for watching.